Greetings all, it's Matt Field, perhaps the only write-in candidate for governor of the state of Utah, going unaffiliated, trying to break the power structure. I have a handful of things I want to get to today, primarily dealing with taxes and the benefits of those members of Congress that are receiving from insider trade. Now, anyway, I'll get to that in greater detail, but I wanted to share this little clip to begin, just because it kind of frames the way things are for me right now, because I am not part of a party. So just have a listen here real quick.
A young man is about to get married. So he reaches out to his father. He's like, "Dad, listen, I'm overwhelmed. Could you do me a huge favor?" Dad says, "Son, of course. What do you got?" He goes, "Listen, I'm going to give you a list of 50 of my closest friends. All I need you to do is please just reach out to them and invite them to the wedding." I said, "Son, take that off your list. I've got it." Fast forward about 4 months. It's the day of the wedding. The son comes out and sees that there are literally 5 of the 50 friends at the wedding. He rushes over to his father, furious, and says, "Dad, I asked you to do one thing." His father put his hand on his shoulder and took him over to the side and said, "I called every one of those 50 people individually." He goes, "Well, Dad, there are literally 5 people here of the 50. He said, "Son, I called each person and I said, I'm calling on behalf of my son. My son is in trouble, and in 90 days, I need you to be at this location." He said, "So let me tell you something, son. Your real friends are the ones that are here." Truth is, in life, we all have a lot of acquaintances. But the problem is, acquaintances are around when things are good. Acquaintances are always around when the money's good. But when the fog rolls in, when the money's gone, those people that are around, those are your friends. In Singapore, there is no trap.
Sorry, a little drag over there, but that's the truth of the matter. You know, right now, when I originally started this out, I sent out a mass email and to a bunch of people that I've known and very well, and it kind of turned out to be the same sort of situation. There's a country song, can't remember who it's from, but it says, "You find out who your friends are, somebody's going to drop everything, run out and crank up their car, get there fast, never stop to think what's in it for me, or it's way too far. They just show on up with a big old smile." And that is something that I have experienced right now, because I'm not a part of a party. I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a Republican, I'm not anything. I'm not an independent, I'm not a libertarian. I am trying to rid our system of the corruption that currently exists and the strongholds that I have found, particularly in this quest of mine, which I believe is just beginning, is that the political parties hold all the cards, and they are propped up by the media. It doesn't matter what particular media you listen to. The only thing that they're talking about are Democrats and Republicans, and that is, frankly, I think by design to some degree. And the only way that you're going to be able to break through the system is if you have, honestly, I'm not sure. I haven't been able to work that one out yet. But there has to be some sort of exodus from the political parties if you really want actual change. And I've gone through this many, many times. I'll go through it real quick again. But there is really no difference between the two political parties. And it is pretty astounding. And people that don't recognize that you truly are fooling yourselves. You truly are fooling yourselves. Because there is very little difference between the two of them. They are out for themselves. They're out to keep power. And they just pander to whomever it is that they are working with or working for. But they will continue to move to the left. It doesn't matter if you are a Democrat or a Republican. The Democrats are running to the left. The Republicans are walking to the left. And they will hang the rest of the country out to dry. And unfortunately, I think the sooner we realize that, the sooner we'll be better off. And the sooner that states begin to break free from the parties, and begin to exercise the constitutional right, the 10th Amendment, the better off the country will be. So, I mean, kind of beginning off with that, and I want to jump into a video here that kind of talks about our current situation with taxes. Sorry, I've been fighting the allergies. But we have some pretty impressive, a pretty impressive tax situation that I'm going to get to here in just one second. But I wanted to hit just 2 articles that are local in the state of Utah. Everything else is applies locally as well. It's not as though I'm going to be reporting nationally, but one of these, this is a little bit older. This was May 1st, but it says Governor Cox gives local communities 1 year to start to make progress on less expensive starter homes. Now, that's a fairly ambiguous title. There are many. Cox urges contractors to build more starter homes costing less than $300,000 as a way to make homes affordable for more local residents. Okay, the biggest issue with this, of course, is that the government does not drive the market drives the market. And just because any governor, I'm not picking on Spency Cox at all, but he is not the begins all and ends all. It doesn't matter what he says. Companies have the right to make money in the market in which they exist, right? And it's just like me. If I'm going to sell a house, I want to sell it for the top dollar. I don't want to leave any cash on the table. Okay, now maybe I make some concessions because I want to get out of it sooner. But at the end of the day, we all want that. Everything that we decide we want to sell, anything that we want to do, we want to make sure that we're getting the maximum amount of money out of it. So just because, unless you're a charitable organization, in which case you have a different model then. Obviously, you're getting your income from a different location other than the sale of a home or real estate or whatever it is. It doesn't matter what Governor Cox says. People are going to continue to sell, and companies are going to continue to sell their homes at whatever they can get. And they should. That's exactly how they should do it. The problem is that this situation was created by government, and it was created by big banks, maybe not necessarily banks, but private equity firms like Vanguard, BlackRock, Blackstone, many of those other companies that have purchased upwards of 40 to 60% of real estate depending on the area. And so this will do nothing. Urging companies to do this will do nothing, period. What has to happen, as I've explained multiple times, which I explain in my book and my proposal, is that we have to do what we can in limiting those two entities that have shot up the prices in general. It's one, we tax the acquisition cost of every single piece of real estate that's purchased by private equity firms. And second, we purchase the cost of the home. We tax the acquisition cost again of people moving in from out of state, the out of staters. This is going to do it's going to do one thing mainly, but it's going to help manage the economic situation. So obviously, this is a supply and demand issue. We don't have enough supply to meet the demand, and what we're trying to do is we're trying to make enough homes to make up for that demand. Now, what the local government's asking builders to do is build a ton of homes so that you can get less for them. Why would any builder work harder to get less? No one would. So the best way to manage the situation that was artificially created, by the way, by poor governance across the entire United States and crony capitalists who are buying up properties and holding them and causing scarcity and then renting them out to people rather than turning around and flipping them or whatever the case may be, artificially being caused. So we need to try and correct that by doing the taxation of the private equity firms and then doing the taxation on the out-of-staters. This will obviously lower demand in a huge way, at which point homes will come down. The price of homes will come down. Now, I understand that and it sucks because I know that people have purchased homes in a very, very high market, which is terrible. And the government, unfortunately, has incentivized young buyers to jump into a market that is terrible, essentially chaining them to their homes for, at least for a much longer period than they'd want to. But we have to address the current issue, and that is that we do not have because of the economy, we are unable to allow other locals to move into homes because they're too expensive. And I don't know if I mentioned this, but I'm one of them. Okay, I've fought tooth and nail to obtain some very specific goals with our home, and because of that, I've had to do a lot of work, and I'm still working on it. Thankfully, we have some contractors moving in, and we'll be in hopefully very soon. But that's the situation. I think everybody's got some. If you're in the real estate market trying to get into a home just for your family, you probably have something like that where you are fighting in some way, shape, or form to provide, and you're unable to because of how unflexible this market is. Sorry, I had a little drink. So, again, that's in my book. Go to govmat.org, check it out, download it. It's free. You can listen to it on Rumble as well. If you're listening to this on Rumble, then you can probably just go to my channel and you can locate it, the entire proposal. I also have another supplement book called The Emperor's New Clothes, Living the Fable Tale, The Emperor's New Clothes, which is also free, and I encourage you to go check that out to learn a little bit more about what's been going on in our crazy country. So, and then I just want to address two more pieces of news, and then I'm going to go on to, I guess there's more news than that, but in terms of articles, I want to address two more articles. One is fairly recent. This was May 7th. So, 1.5 days ago or so from the time this is recorded. It says, auditor slams lawmakers over bathroom bill after receiving numerous frivolous complaints. The new bill that has been brought out is that the current law is that you cannot have transgender bathrooms in government buildings. Okay, and the thing that really bothers me is the majority of Utah is behind this new law, but KSL is reporting the opposite side. Okay, and it is somewhat frustrating because KSL is church-owned, and I think the church needs to review the various companies and entities that they monitor and own, and make sure that they aren't just spewing out frivolous things. This bill does restrict access to bathrooms, and I don't know why this is a problem at all in any capacity whatsoever. If you are a man and you claim to be a woman and you decide you want to use the men's bathroom, what difference does, and you have to use the men's bathroom, I guess, is in this case, and you have to use the men's bathroom, what does it matter? How many of us are going in there expressing our sexuality in the bathroom? Most of us, if you're normal, I guess, most of us are going in as discreetly as possible, getting into a stall, using that stall, and getting out there as fast as we can because it stinks in there. I mean, who is people going in there and chatting and chilling and all that sort of thing? No, this is ridiculous. Anyone that uses a bathroom correctly will not have any problem whatsoever using the bathroom based upon what your actual gender is. And I mean, and there's only two, and it's very obvious as to what you are. Okay, you are a man or you are a woman. Okay, and that very, very small percentage doesn't matter in terms of this sort of argument of those that are born a little bit differently. Anyway, so this is, I think it's terrible. Again, I talk about in my book when we talk about how we have to regulate the media a little bit, not necessarily preventing them. They still have their freedom of press, definitely, but they need to start categorizing various articles. And this would be an opinion-styled article because it is only expressing one side of the aisle. And it's not expressing what the vast majority of people believe. So I think, this is not good for KSL, and I think KSL, again, they need to clean up ranks. The same with Deseret News, by the way. Okay, so now we're going to move on to taxes. Taxes and kind of the benefit that many legislators, not just in the state, but in the U.S. as a whole, are able to gain from public monies and from public knowledge. Well, I guess more like insider knowledge is probably the better way to put it. And there's this article. It's done by a company or a website called Visual Capitalists, and it says visualizing the tax burden of every U.S. state. Now, this is based upon not just your income tax, but various other taxes that exist across the entire state, is what their analysis is. And so it has kind of this data and methodology. And so it says it's important to understand that under this methodology, the tax burden measures the percentage of an average person's income that is paid towards state and local taxes. This considers property tax, income tax, sales, and excise tax. Okay, so I've mentioned this a million times before, and everybody is going to pay taxes in the state of Utah and pretty much everywhere else. They're going to pay taxes on everything. They pay taxes on their property, on their income, on their, which is crazy because you pay taxes on your income, but then with that income, you're going to pay additional excise tax, you're going to pay additional sales tax, you're going to pay your property tax, you're going to pay all these other hidden taxes. I know a lot of cities have parks tax and additional education taxes, and I mean it's all over the place, and it's pretty ridiculous. And so, Utah being a quote unquote red state, you would believe that they'd be on the lower end of things. Okay. Unfortunately, that's not the case. So, and it doesn't take us very long to see what's going on here. If you review the total tax burden, you are going to find that New York is number one at 12%. No surprise there. Hawaii is 11.8%. No surprise there. Vermont is 11.1%. Now, I think Vermont isn't entirely a blue state, but, it's pretty close. Maine is, and it's 10.7. California definitely is 10.4. Connecticut 10.1. Minnesota 10%. Illinois 9.7. New Jersey 9.5. Rhode Island 9.4. So what's the commonality between those top, I believe that's 10. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. What's the common strain between all of those? Majority blue states, right? So you think, majority blue states, they're probably going to have higher taxes. That's kind of their thing. Then you get to Utah, number 11, 9.4%. 9.4% of our income goes to taxes. The first, probably the reddest state in the entire union. Shouldn't we have the lowest taxes? And in my opinion, no taxes whatsoever. And in the plan that I propose moving from a taxation system to an endowment system, to where we put money into an endowment for a period of time and then we eliminate all taxes altogether. No one ever proposes things like this because they make too much sense and it eliminates the amount of power that a politician has and their access to money. But I thought this was mind-blowing. 9.4%. I mean, we are literally only 1% behind California. And California, I mean, you got to love the state. You got to love the beauty of that state, the beaches, the everything. I mean, California, they really got the cream of the crop over there when it comes to just natural resources and everything else. But it's crazy over there. And Californians admit that themselves, okay? I'm not just saying that from my own point of view, but a lot of Californians admit that themselves. And in fact, they've moved out of California because it has been so bad. But we are only 1% behind California. Isn't that crazy to you? That's crazy to me. I never thought in 100 years that we would be this high on the list. It's 10 red state or 10 blue states, and then we have Mr. Red here, probably the reddest state in the entire union, Utah, sitting at 9.4%. So again, I ask you again, do you really believe that the Republicans and Democrats are all that different? Here's another example of the fact that it does not make a difference from what party you come. It is no different between whom you vote for. Democrats and Republicans have caused the issues in our system today, and yet we continue to elect Republicans and Democrats. I believe it was Einstein that said if you keep asking the same question twice, expecting a different answer, you are insane, or that is at very least the definition of insanity. All right, so that was pretty eye-opening to me. I did not anticipate. I came across this actually yesterday night, and I was kind of blown away by and they go through the methodology. You can go through and if you want to look up exactly visualizing the state burden of every U.S. state, personal finance. It's again, it's under visualcapitalist.com, and you can kind of go into more depth as to how they came up with these various numbers. But I mean, I believe it. We have some pretty high taxes on our properties, and even in very rural areas. I mean, the place that I live is very, very rural, and we still have some pretty significant taxes. It hasn't always been that way, but it has gone up quite a bit. And so, but then just so that you guys know, this would probably bug me if I didn't say it too, but the state with the lowest average tax on income is Alaska at 4.9%. So if you really want to escape some state and local taxes, Alaska is your place to be. But if you want to go a little closer, Wyoming's 5.7, so not too bad. But of course, then we have the entire problem with the federal government and the amount of money that they charge us, which kind of leads me on to my next point. Now, this person that's about to speak is quite liberal. She is extremely liberal, and I don't know her very well, but she makes a very, very good point here regarding taxes, not taxes in general. She's speaking specifically toward taxes in the United States, in the federal government, but she makes some really good points here.
The argument of taxation is theft starts to resonate because you see how much gets taken out of your paychecks and you see your quality of life dwindle away year after year. I'm supposed to sit here and get real upset that the federal government doesn't have the kind of revenue that it could if they just tax us more and tax wealthier people more. What are you going to do with the money? Are you going to actually fight for policies that are going to improve the lives of Americans? Okay, you want to tout the infrastructure bill. What was the infrastructure bill? There's a provision in there that privatizes public infrastructure. I'm not excited about that, but I'm supposed to celebrate it? Really? Okay, fine. And then there's the provisions that provides government grants, meaning our taxpayer money, to corporations. Listen, if we had a well-functioning government that actually utilized those tax dollars to improve the lives of Americans, I would feel even more strongly against extending the tax cuts for the rich. But I can't help but think about what the government does with that money, and it makes me absolutely furious.
So, I mean, she has some really good points there. I don't agree with everything that she said there, but she has some really good points in that the federal government will continue to spend our money at an atrocious rate and nobody's going to make any change on it. And it's the same thing with the state. If you don't think the state is in the same trajectory as the federal government, then again, you're fooling yourself. The state is never going to stop spending money in an atrocious manner. It will continue in that way until the end of time, unless something is actually changed, unless we actually begin to focus on making a principled investment in an endowment and then having the state regulate and do everything else they need to off the interest of that investment. And this is very, very possible. It would be very, very easy. Well, I guess easy is relative, but in terms of us, so let's say, for example, I think the total state budget, if I'm not mistaken, I wrote about it relatively recently, but it's something like $25 billion, which isn't a whole lot of money compared to what the United States spends on average. Let me see if I can just find this just real fast. This is in my book. I just have a printed version here to kind of help me get through this. Let's see. And there is a link in my book that kind of discusses this a little bit more in depth. But let's see. No, I can't find it right now. Anyway, it's roughly $25 billion. Okay, and a lot of that is being wasted away, frankly. And there's a fair amount of debt that exists. And I talk about that the government shouldn't have more than a 30% debt to income ratio when they are, with anything that they're doing. So if we take schooling, for example, there's about between $9,000 and $11,000 that is spent on each student in schools today. If we move to a system that was more focused on the children than it was the administration and the teachers, then we could easily reduce that by at least 90%. And why do I say that? Because my family and we don't attend your regular public school. We work with a program called Harmony, and there's several others just like it. And what they do is they provide a very, very small sum of money that allows us to acquire the things that we need to, pay for a different schooling that we need to, and it's approximately each child gets about $1,800. Okay, so of that $1,800 compared to $11,000, that's obviously, that reduces us pretty dang close to the 90% that I'm talking about. That's about, we're only using about 16% of the total amount that is spent on each child in the education system. But it's not as though my kids are, in fact, my kids are very, very well educated, partially because my wife is very good at doing some of that, but also because we go to various programs that are provided in, areas. I live close to Logan, Utah, but I don't live in Logan. We have to drive about 30 minutes to get there. And we're able to take advantage of various programs that are offered there through private companies. And we also take advantage of another one that's in Brigham City that we drive to. And so we have a lot more options for our kids to learn, and they're able to get out of the house, they're able to meet new people, they're able to experience new things, and they're not confined to a specific classroom that they go to every day, and they have to deal with it, and they have to have, and there are bullies all around, and they're pushing them and prodding them and doing all these different things. There are many, many more options. And so if we look at just, talking about my education plan and reducing that, if we were able to reduce that amount, just through a couple of decisions, we already find ourselves in a very strong position that when we are pulling, 5, maybe up to 7% from the endowment fund, that is already beginning to fund everything that we need. And as that fund grows through the taxation of these private capital firms that are buying up real estate and the out-of-staters that are coming in, over the course of between 6 and 10 years, we should be able to get enough money in the endowment fund and continuing to tax up to that point till about 6 years, 6 to 10 years. We would be able to get enough money in the endowment fund to provide for all of our needs. And then from there, people that move into the state would have to make some sort of contribution to the endowment fund that would then they've made their contribution. Natives have made their contribution for many, many years. But now if you're going to move in, if you're a company, if you're an individual and you move into the state, you have to make some sort of contribution to that endowment fund, because now you're going to glean the benefits for as long as you're there, right? And we don't have to be continually taxed. Can you imagine what that would do to the economy? No more taxes across the board. You don't have to worry about your property tax. You don't have to worry about excise tax. You don't have to worry about anything. Oh, man. Talk about liberty. Talk about freedom. No more, like she said, it's theft. It really is theft. It's a compelled thing. It's like if you miss a payment on some sort of tax, you are going to be hounded by the government in the worst kind of way. You're going to get fees upon fees. You're going to have problems upon problems. They're going to make your life a living hell. And it's just because they want their quote unquote money, when in all reality it's not theirs, but they're entitled to take it because they wrote on a piece of paper that said they could, right? It's wrong. No other person can do that. No other person can do that. So why does the government have the benefit of doing something like that and the citizen does not? I think it's an amazing question. And I think the endowment system is an amazing system that has been in operation for millennia. Oh, maybe not millennia, but for hundreds of years. Look at the Harvard endowment fund. Look at the BYU endowment fund. Look at the U endowment fund. They have so much money that is delivered to them every single year, right? Just because they continue to maintain their endowment fund. It takes no effort on their part. It's incredible. It's amazing. And we can do the same thing as a state if we can get the right people in there and we can get the right people to support it, right? Again, that's a huge battle. I understand that, but we have to begin someplace. Now, in relation to this, in relation to taxes and the way that things have happened, there are a lot of things that kind of throw up some extra red flags. In my book, I talk about what removing decadence is one of the key principles of removing corruption in our state. And again, to review all of those, I talk about lambasted or lamb-ted. Is the process a 7-prong approach to eliminate corruption in our state and throughout the country, honestly. Now, it's not going to eliminate, it's not 100% success, right? But I think we can do a lot with it. It begins by eliminating lobbyists. Second, it comes with the A, stands for accountability, and I have an accountability program that's in the book. M stands for money accountability. Again, another program in the book. B is the bracket system, which is the voting system, just like March Madness, right? You vote for one candidate in a certain area, and they move on to the next stage over and over and over until the very end. And no money involved in that process. Then you go from there, then you go on to the T. T stands for term limits. We cannot have any politicians in there for longer than 8 years, and any appointed official or any employee that has any level of legislative power in that they can apply a fee or they can do this or that. They cannot be there for more than 10 years. Then you move on to E, eliminate all parties. I've already kind of talked a little bit about that. There is really no difference between a Democrat and Republican. They're all moving in the same direction, just at different rates. We have to remove them. And again, George Washington talks about this a lot. And you can read a little bit more about that in my book. You can look it up online too if you'd like. And then last we come on to decadence, which is the D. And decadence is basically enforced by law. Congress in the U.S. Congress is allowed to insider trade. No one else in the entire United States is able to do that. And in fact, if you do, you are put in jail. Does anyone know about Martha Stewart? Right? She made an insider trade that made her $50,000. The woman's worth $1 billion plus, but she goes to jail. She went to jail anyway. You know, this is happening at a constant rate, and I have a couple of examples here. And this is a little bit difficult to verify, but this has been this is from a guy named Matt Kors. I don't know this guy. I found this clip, but it's pretty interesting. And I believe it. It's difficult to verify. You can look at various websites that kind of track trades, but they do have to report them. And so I just want you to listen to what he has to say here.
The GOAT of Wall Street is at it again. We can now estimate that Nancy Pelosi has made $7 million in the stock market in 1 week. This is the largest weekly gain that we have seen from any politician ever. That's $1 million a day. These are elected officials with no experience in Wall Street, and yet they're the best to ever do it. I'm sure there's nothing suspect going on.
So, I mean, he's making an estimation that she's making $7 million a year. Or she made $7 million over the course of the first week of May, I believe. And now it's not entirely verifiable. Again, that's an estimate that he's made, but it's completely verifiable that she's making under $200,000 a year. And when she was speaker, maybe I think it was a little over $200,000 a year. And she has been there a long time. But even if she was there for 30 years, you add up the entire proceeds, and if you put on, a generous interest rate of like 5% on that money, you'll have a good amount of money. Let's say $200,000 over the course of 30 years, right? And that's about $6 million. And if let's say that over the course, usually you double your money every 20 years at a 5% rate, right? So, and she didn't have it all at the same time, so we'll just give her a double on that. So theoretically, if she invested pretty well, like an average American, she would have had about $12 million. That's assuming she hasn't spent any money whatsoever on her living. She hasn't paid a mortgage. She hasn't bought a car. She hasn't done anything. This is literally her just having that straight gravy going directly to her account and that garnishing approximately a 5% interest over the course of 30 years. She'd have $12 million. She is currently, let's see, the net worth of Nancy Pelosi, of course, it doesn't want to show me that on Pelosi. There we are. Net worth of Nancy Pelosi is $114 million, which is insane. And that's just, again, that's probably an estimation. I've seen some others that are 120 million, it's just around there. But she's 100 million. So she's basically multiplied that by 10. And Nancy Pelosi isn't the only one that's on there. Oh, and by the way, she said GOAT. That was disrespectful. GOAT means the greatest of all time in slang. So he wasn't calling her a GOAT. He was just saying that she was the greatest of all time in terms of trading because she has made so much money on the stock market while she's been in office. So very weird. But, not everyone is created equal. So she's a Democrat. And then here's this rep. I can't see his name very well right here. His name's Rep Rahana. I think I'm saying that right. He's also from California. He's a Democrat, and he makes a very perplexing point here.
Don't come to Congress if you want to make a profit. Americans are frustrated with Congress because too many members are personally trading stock, because PAC money is drowning out the voice of voters, and because there are more lobbyists around here than legislators. That is why today I'm calling on Speaker Johnson to bring for a vote, an up or down vote, a bipartisan bill to ban members of Congress from trading stock. Representative Abigail Spanberger and Representative Chip Roy have been working on this bill since 2020, listening to voices like Unusual Whales and Quiver Quantitative and Capital Trades. They understand that we need a vote. Speaker after speaker keeps saying we'll have a vote, but we haven't had a vote. Bring that bill for an up or down vote.
So now I don't know the entire details of that particular bill, and there could be a lot of pork in there. I don't know. It's really hard to tell when you really can't believe any politician anymore, and that is a sad thing. Because back in the day, if Washington said this or Washington said that, though he wasn't perfect, I think for the most part he was telling the truth, and I think that's true of many of our forefathers. But you have this guy who's saying, hey, we have this bill that is eliminating our ability to insider trade and to trade stocks, period. Right? You can't trade stock, and I agree with him. If you are in elected office, you may not trade stocks. It's not doable. You can't do it. And in the state of Utah, there's actually a provision in one of the bills that allows you to garnish up to 10% benefit, and it's a little unclear as to what that means exactly. 10% of $100 million, that's a pretty good take, right? And there's many, many things like that permit not just Utah legislators, but, U.S. Congress men and women to benefit greatly from the stock market and from other deals and things that the government's doing, which is 100% wrong. If I can't do it, you can't do it. We cannot continue to have, this is one of the things I talk about in the decadence, right? The D in lambasted is decadence. And when they are elected, it's as though they have these special rights that we do not have, that supersede our rights. And it should be completely opposite. We are the private citizen, you are the public official, and you should be scrutinized at every turn with everything that you do. I'm private, I should be left alone. Okay? If you decide to step in the public light, then you're going to be scrutinized, and I'm okay with that, right? In your whatever you're doing in your public life, right? And if you are using information from the public information you receive that is privileged, and you're using that to benefit your own life, that is wrong. That is illegal. And we don't need to have a law for that, for crying out loud. It should just be done. And I know that Mitch McConnell, he's been doing the same thing. I know, unfortunately, Spencer Cox has gleaned some benefit in terms of what he's done with his own company. And there's probably lists and lists of others that have benefited from one way or another from being in public office. And we have to eliminate that benefit, because that's one of the things that's driving bad politicians into office. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that everything Spencer Cox has done is bad. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not trying to poo-poo on him. I'm only making that mention because there have been some recent investigations, at least journalistic investigations. And again, maybe those are totally and completely wrong, but I haven't seen him refute them. So, this is the world we live in, and we have to do what we can to fight against them. We have to do what we can to enforce real morality, so we can prevent this monarchy that continues to develop right under our noses. I mean, we are the proverbial frog boiling in the water, and at some point, we're going to be done. We're going to be cooked, and there's not really going to be anything we can do about it at that point. So please take the time, go to govmat.org, check out the book /proposal, and let's move this needle forward in a way in which is going to improve our lives drastically. Now, I like to end, I actually missed it last week, I'm sorry, but I like to end with a little bit, and this is actually directly from the decadence portion of that section that I was just talking about. But I have a little bit of, I found this clip, I think it's just funny. It's from a comedian, his name is Quinn Dale, and he does some funny stuff. Some stuff's inappropriate, but this is funny, talking about a law in California.
You can still go to prison if you shoot someone on your own property, even if you can prove they're a Jehovah's Witness. Did you know that?
So I think that's just funny to me because I was a missionary in France, and there were a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses, and we met with them a lot, or not necessarily met with them, but we talked to them a lot, and in a lot of ways we were trying to fight the good fight in terms of what we believed, and anyway, I could see them saying the same thing about LDS missionaries too. But the point that I wanted to make here, under the decadence portion, there's a scripture that's in Romans 12:3-5. For I say, through the grace given to me, to every man that is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think of himself soberly, according as God hath dealt unto man every measure of faith. And I think that is important. When you are in government, you should be required to memorize that scripture. You should not think of yourself more highly than you ought to think. Anyone in any professional position or management position, or some position that has some level of leadership, you cannot begin to believe that you are better than others. Otherwise, you're going to fall. You're going to fall into that corrupt hole that eliminates morality from your life and prevents you from doing the best thing that you should do. And I just wanted to read one portion here out of my book that says, anyone in a position of power and in general should be actively pushing accolades, recognition, and honors away. We need the proverbial Marcus Aurelius assistant standing behind us to remind us that you are just a man. And we are. We are just men and women that should be doing our very best, and I hope that we are. And I hope that you'll give a proposal like mine a shot, and we can go to the state government and we can make some serious changes, because I truly believe that if we don't, we will be cresting that waterfall and finding ourselves in a very, very uncomfortable position. Thank you for taking the time. Please listen to the book. Please share it. And I'll see you next time.